Bill Lane was searching for a different way to live, an alternative to a 9-to-5 job and house in the suburbs. Lane was American, and the Vietnam War was proof to many Americans their parents' way of life may not be the only way, or even the right way. So they fled, thousands of them, searching for an alternative. Hippies, back-to-the-landers, draft dodgers.
The Draft Lottery, a live report on tonight's picking of the birth dates for the draft.
It was 1973, and many of those refugees came to the Kootenays, Bill Lane among them. It was perfect, peaceful, secluded, and cheap. No one asked questions or stuck a gun in your hand. A hippie haven. And Bill Lane lived in his van for a while in the Slocan Valley and quickly got to know the colorful locals. He was friendly and curious, but perhaps a little too curious. After the valley, Lane drifted to the Wild Horse Creek area above Weimar, and he helped hippies build a commune there. And again, he seemed to have a lot of questions about why these young people were tuning in and dropping out. Lane looked just like him, with his long hair, handlebar mustache, bell-bottom jeans, but he wasn't like him at all. Bill Lane, it turns out, was the man he pretended to be railing against.
Sisters and brothers, the head of the Police Sergeants Association called emotionally for all-out war between the pigs and us. We accepted.
Bill Lane was actually Special FBI Agent Krill Payne. He was sent to the Kootenays to ferret out terrorists like the infamous Weathermen Group, some of whom were thought to have fled to BC. That's why Agent Payne had so many questions. But an unexpected thing happened to him during his stay here. He found he admired many of the hippies and back-to-the-landers he was sent to spy on. Payne was fascinated by their unique lifestyle and what he described as amazing human perseverance. Agent Payne found no weathermen or any other terrorists here in the basin. What he did find was people living simply, cooperatively, building an alternative lifestyle. Hi, I'm Mitchell Scott, and this is The Headwaters, brought to you by Columbia Basin Trust. On this podcast, we're going to meet people living a different kind of dream. People who create an alternative way of living, working, even playing. They're square pegs tired of trying to fit into round holes. And the Columbia Basin is full of people like that. Free thinkers not afraid to embrace the new or the untested. We'll start the podcast with the story of alternative currency, which has found a home here in the Kootenays. Bob Keating takes us deep into 2 Bitcoin mines. Bob, we have Bitcoin miners here in the basin.
Do we ever? The latest arrivals to the Kootenays are often people of means, looking for that alternative way to live. And with modern telecommunications, fiber optic cable, high-speed internet, that type of thing, they can finally do it here. And they are doing it here, moving here and setting up things like Bitcoin mines. The pandemic just sped this process up, of course.
They're coming to the hinterland, and they're bringing jobs with them, and they're bringing a boatload of money with them, too.
And they're bringing cryptocurrency mines. We have quietly become leaders in Southeast BC because of those outsiders moving in and setting up these crypto mines here. There's so much interest, Mitch, in cryptocurrency mining here in the basin and beyond. The province slapped an 18-month moratorium on new mines that want to hook up to BC Hydro. They just want to slow the whole thing down and say, whoa, let's have a look at this.
Now, I'm not a cryptocurrency expert, but I know a couple things. One, when it comes to mining, you're not digging down in the ground looking for actual Bitcoins. And 2, these mines require a whole bunch of power.
Which is why the BC government is trying to slow things down to take a look at, is this the best use of power?
So where did your research take you?
I started out in Canal Flats, and one of the biggest Bitcoin mines in Canada. It's the site of an old Canfor sawmill. The mill was bought by legendary Kootenay entrepreneur Brian Fair after it closed. He dabbled a bit in Bitcoin, then really went in big, teaming up with two Australian brothers who've built one of the largest publicly traded Bitcoin companies in the world, Iris Energy.
Wow.
Yeah, the first big project was there in Canal Flats. Their prototype is that Bitcoin mine. It transformed the place. I went out and had a look. I was greeted by a security guard at the gate at the old mill site, which looks nothing like a mill anymore, Mitch. It's a series now of long metal buildings that house 9,000 computers.
Hello, Dan.
Hi, Dan. Bob Keeble.
Bob, nice to meet you. Start with the first generation megapods.
Yeah, show me that. When I arrived, I meet one of the Australian brothers, Dan Roberts. The Roberts made a small fortune investing in and building traditional infrastructure projects all over the world. Toll roads, bridges, wind farms, that type of thing. They did very, very well for themselves. But these brothers decided to ditch tradition about 5 years ago and jump into Bitcoin big, and they chose the Kootenays as their place to start.
Which begs the question, why Bitcoin and why here?
Those are my first two questions exactly. Why the Kootenays? Why Bitcoin?
We actually first bought Bitcoin back in 2013 on the run up to $1,000, and then it crashed to 500, and we thought, oh, this is silly, nonsense, magic internet money, and kind of forgot about it for a couple of years. And at that point, we read a lot about monetary history, and you can't kill it. It's objectively the best monetary asset that we've ever seen.
Okay, so why Canal Flats, or why Canada, for that matter?
So, first of all, we said, what are the key ingredients you need to run this computing service? Cool temperatures, really important. Stability of law, good regulatory jurisdiction. But most importantly, renewable energy.
There's the key, Mitch, to the Bitcoin boom in BC and here in the basin. Renewable energy. Bitcoin mining, as you said, takes a lot of power to run all those computers, and the Roberts were determined to find a place with steady renewable energy.
And Canal Flats is a place. So we did a profile on Canal Flats in season 1 in an episode called The River, where a crazy entrepreneur tried to join the Columbia and Kootenay River. Seems like it's attracting interesting entrepreneurs, this Canal Flats.
It does. It's attracting people who think differently, who think about the future. And with all that land and decent power capacity, they can do it. As we heard in past podcasts, we have this huge amount of hydroelectric power here in the basin. We actually have so much, we provide half the province's power needs and sell excess to the U.S. So we were a perfect base of operations for a crypto mine. And so the Roberts set up shop here.
We believe in Bitcoin. We think it's here to stay. We think there's a real benefit to improving how Bitcoin is secured. Literally a change in how an industry is developing every day, because there is no design manual. No one's done this before, and that's pretty exciting.
Okay, before we hear any more, we're going to have to get the Cole's notes on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. What are they?
Yeah, big question. Even these miners themselves admit most people have no idea what they do out there in Canal Flats and at other crypto mines around BC. So let's turn to an expert. That's Rich Rabnett. He's a Bitcoin expert who's been investing and trading in cryptocurrency for years.
He's also a Juno-nominated jazz guitarist and a relatively good disc golf player.
Well, I'm glad he's a jazz guitarist, because understanding cryptocurrency is a bit like listening to Dizzy Gillespie on the Autobahn. It is thrilling, but pay close attention or your head's going to hurt.
Try to get your head around this one. Essentially, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies were designed to cut out the middlemen, banks, governments, and Federal Reserves. For most people, they're used as a ledger, not unlike credit cards. Imagine you were going to go buy your sweetie a new pair of shoes. With most transactions these days, you're not sending physical money. Your bank is adjusting a ledger showing you are now slightly poorer and the shoe seller slightly richer. Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency does that exact transaction. You can buy stuff directly with cryptocurrency in a few select places. Bitcoin and other cryptos can be converted into dollars, but mostly they're kept in virtual wallets, only accessible by phone or computer. There's been land and house transactions settled here in the Kootenays using cryptocurrency. No physical money changed hands. A crypto ledger was just adjusted. That crypto ledger is called the blockchain, and that's why we have mines. It takes a lot of power to build and process the blockchain. That, in part, is what all those computers at crypto mines are doing, processing transactions and providing a form of security for the system. They're also trying to solve a complex series of mathematical problems. That is how miners like Iris Energy attain bitcoins, solving complex math problems and building the blockchain. The best comparison in the physical world is gold. Gold miners raise capital, stake ground, and do exploration work before mining. If it were easy, everyone would mine gold, and the currency would be valueless. It's the same with bitcoins. The mining is actually data processing, which takes investment to achieve. Crypto mining takes energy, but instead of the blood and sweat of miners, it's the energy of thousands of computers. Chew on that one, Mitch.
Thank you, Rich, for the Cole's notes on Bitcoin. Okay, so that mine in Canal Flats is actually more a data processing center solving math problems and processing transactions?
Yeah. Those 9,000 computers running 24/7 are mining Bitcoin and solving that math problem. And they have 2 sites just like it in northern BC, as I said.
So it sounds like there is a lot of power being used, which
yes.
I would imagine is raising some red flags.
Yes, it's exactly why BC Hydro's put that 18-month moratorium on new crypto mines. The province said it had 21 applications for new mines that, if allowed, would consume enough energy to power every home in a city the size of Kelowna, if you can believe it. So they put the brakes on for a while.
And that's a lot of power consumption. So
yes.
How does Dan Roberts at Iris Energy feel about that?
Well, he has energy agreements in place for his mine, so he has no problem with them taking a pause. But the Roberts also say what they're doing is taking these mothballed mills, retraining workers, creating capital where none existed before, and using this space that would sit empty. The Roberts think what they're doing is a good use of electricity and land.
At a provincial level, we believe we're solving some valuable problems. There is an oversupply of electricity in this province. We can come in, we can turn that into Bitcoin, which we liquidate daily, and we can build a whole industry around this. We can go into those regional towns that have been decimated by the closure of the mill, rehire the local workers, retrain them, deliver all these benefits back into the community, taxes, etc. It just felt like the right thing to do. There's a profit incentive where it doesn't matter if it happens here, there or anywhere. If people can make money, generally the market finds a way. And we just believe that doing this is the best way to do it.
But it hasn't all been sunshine in the cryptocurrency world. It seems like it goes up and down and down, and up, up.
Yes, it has been a wild ride. Ask anyone who invested in crypto. Last year was a nightmare for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. We had the FTX exchange collapse, and Bitcoin tumbled to a point where Iris Energy, which was once valued at well over $1 billion, lost 3/4 of its value. And Canadian governments are now starting to step in and question whether cryptocurrency is a good use of electricity. Let's go to another mine in another neighborhood.
Hello, Bill from DMG. Yeah, I'll let you in the gate here.
This mine is at the edge of the basin in Christina Lake, DMG Blockchain Solutions, a Bitcoin mine almost as big as the Canal Flats mine. I arrived there and meet owner Sheldon Bennett.
So, we on? Yeah. Okay. So, this was a 27,000 square foot finger joint plant. Unfortunately, it would be just over 10 years ago. This place closed.
Like the Aussie brothers, Bennett has repurposed a mill and is mining Bitcoin. And like the brothers, he thinks he's providing a service to both the local community and to British Columbia. I asked Bennett to describe what he does there in Christina Lake, and this is how he described his mine.
That is a really big data center that is specific to cryptocurrency. And it's kind of like a data center for Visa or MasterCard. They have to secure all the transactions they do. They use different type of encryption. This is the same kind of idea, except we're not Visa and MasterCard, we're Bitcoin.
I'm curious what Sheldon Bennett has to say about the troubles that Bitcoin has gone through.
Yes, if there's one thing I've learned doing this piece, it's that Bitcoin miners are very defensive about what they do, and they're quite altruistic. They are in this to make money, for sure, but they also believe what they're doing is a solution to our world monetary problems. This is how Bennett sees the last year of Bitcoin instability. Before FTX, there was the collapse of a Bitcoin exchange in Vancouver, and then comes the big tumble, the FTX.
And I look at that and I go, okay, growing pains of any industry. I also read, not too long ago, Sealy Simmons, the guys that make beds. They filed for bankruptcy too. Outstanding $10 billion to vendors. That didn't really make the news, but FTX, they went, I think, at $8 billion, and it dominated the news for weeks. But the guys that made my bed, nobody even knows about it.
So Sheldon Bennett is a Bitcoin booster like the Roberts.
Is he ever? He spends a lot of time in Ottawa hoping to convince Canadian politicians this crypto mining is good for Canada. In their eyes, they're replacing a resource industry with a high-tech industry. A couple dozen people work at both these mines. And they say what they're doing is creating an alternative to big banks and credit card companies. And they also say cryptocurrency is not going away, so we can either be part of it or not.
There's always been this idea of Canada as a leader versus Canada as a follower. And do you really want to wait till the EU figures it out, or do you want to wait until a Middle Eastern country figures it out and copy everything they do? Or do you want to look at this technology, figure out what you think is best for this country and its people, and then show that to the rest of the world and say, look at how we're leading?
Bob Keating with an alternative way of working in the basin. There is a group of people in the Kootenays who got together almost a decade ago to explore a different way of living. What they came up with is a co-housing project on the north shore of Kootenay Lake. It's called Headwaters Village, a cluster of privately owned homes with a common purpose. Lindsay Clegg has more on that for us.
Marley Tudor chops salad for an evening meal. She's cooking for what she considers a modest-sized group of her neighbors.
Tonight's pretty small. There's only 18. Sometimes we have as many as like 45, so that is obviously a lot bigger job.
Tudor, her husband and 2 sons, are relatively new residents to Headwaters Village. They've been here about 3 years, and once every couple of months or so, it's their turn to prepare dinner.
Cook a big meal every, I think we do 6 weeks, and then I don't have to cook every other night.
Headwaters is a cluster of 24 condos high up on a bench overlooking the lake. You could easily mistake it for a stylish townhouse complex in any rural Kootenay community. But there's one big difference here. Headwaters is an intentional community. Residents are much more involved in each other's lives. Neighbors cook for each other, participate in group activities, and look out for the community's kids.
Liked the idea of living out of town, but we didn't want all the work of living out of town by ourselves because we both work full time. And so you could come here and they had chickens and property to play on for the kids to build their bike jumps and stuff, but you don't have to do all the work of having your own 5 or 10 acres by yourself because everybody helps out. So that was probably the main attraction. So yeah, and the community element's awesome. At our old neighborhood, there weren't a lot of kids.
At Headwaters, about a third of the 60 residents are children, and there's seniors here too. Anyone interested in a form of alternative community living is
welcome. Come on in.
This co-housing community is the dream of Andrew and Tara Earnshaw and a group of like-minded friends. About a decade ago, they began thinking of a way to live that focused on connections to neighbors.
I have a long history of interest in ideal ways of living together, of communities being highly functional. We just stumbled across co-housing as this really elegant recipe for balancing the efficiency of doing this with other folks and the need for privacy and having functional family units. So we found the recipe and went for it.
The recipe is 24 condominiums built on the side of a mountain. Simple, functional post and beam construction on a tight footprint. A community path runs up the center to Tara Earnshaw's door. At first, she says, outsiders were suspicious of their plans.
A very clear distinction, though, I think, that needs to be made always with our neighborhood is that it's the community without the cult. We really are a neighborhood.
The concept of co-housing originated in Scandinavia in the 60s and spread all over the world. BC is a leader in Canada, California in the U.S. The architects of Headwaters turned to consultants in California when designing their community.
When people move here, you don't sign your life away. You really move into a home with a community that's functioning.
And that's part of the premise, that there are 3 different unit types in the community that range from a 2-bedroom all-in-one floor targeted to seniors to a 3-bedroom across 3 floors. This unit's one of the larger units. I think our total square footage is 2,200 square feet. And legally, this is a strata. It's no different than a condominium building anywhere else in British Columbia.
The units at Headwaters are bought and sold like any governed under BC's Strata Property Act. The fees here are higher to maintain the community hall and run the 10-hectare property. Residents manage financial aspects, landscaping, and building maintenance. Decisions are made by consensus at monthly general meetings.
In addition to those 24 homes, we have about a 5,000 square foot community hall, which is right in the center of the neighborhood. You have to walk past the community hall to get to your homes. You have to leave your car up in a common parking lot and walk past a lot of other people's kitchen windows to get to your house. So that's kind of the architecture of co-housing, the design of, encouraging connection without requiring it from anybody.
Thanks everybody for coming tonight. We're having niçoise salad tonight, which is one of our favorite recipes when we're making a
Marley
salad.
Tudor's dinner is about to be served. The night's diners sit around a long table in front of a fireplace. There's also a yoga studio and teen room in the community hall, plus laundry and guest rooms. 91-year-old Edna Poffenroth, the oldest resident, arrives for dinner.
It was my daughter's dream, and she introduced me to it, and I knew it was right from the beginning. I mean, I'm very fortunate at my age to find a new home with friends all around. It's very difficult to make friends at my age, new friends. And, hey, I could name everybody at the table as a friend.
About half of the original builders of Headwaters have moved on and been replaced with new families. That's to be expected, according to Andrew Earnshaw, who says individual situations change and co-housing is not for everyone. But he says the experiment surpassed his expectations. It's become not just his home, but a vibrant alternative community.
I was always very involved when I lived in Nelson, creating neighborhood connection amongst the people on my block kind of thing. But the frequency of it is so much greater here that the things that happen as a result of that, in terms of fun, let's go on a camping trip together, or let's go down and sail, let's go to the beach, or, someone in my family is sick and I really need help, or I've lost a loved one and I really need support, or those things just all happen much more naturally.
Lindsay Clegg with a story about an alternative community. We've looked at work and living. Now how about play? Here in the Basin, we have all kinds of people who compete internationally in traditional Canadian sports like skiing, hockey, even baseball. Think the Bay family from Trail, or the Niedermeyers in Cranbrook. But there are alternatives to that too.
Hello, I'm Jasmine Lowther. I am a professional trail runner, and I like to run long and far, so anywhere from 50 kilometers upwards to 100 miles.
Jasmine Lowther is an ultra-marathon runner from the Kootenays who only took up the sport about 3 years ago. Now she wins epic marathons all over the world, running as far as 100 miles, often through mountains. We tried to catch up with Jasmine. It wasn't very easy for our final word.
It's a niche sport. It's growing. We've got more trail runners in the Kootenays across Canada. One of the fastest growing sports today. But that said, it's still on the fringes, and I'm excited to see where it goes. We'll see it probably in the Olympics. We'll see it probably kicked around for the long term. The allure to ultra running for me, I think, is just the sheer challenge and unknown. Oftentimes you ask yourself if you're going to be able to even accomplish what you're setting out to do. There's a little bit of fear and excitement, and it all brews. And you set out on these adventures, and you go to unknown places in your mind, and you come out the other side a new person. After every race that I've done, after every challenge, it just, you grow into someone that believes in yourself, and it has absolutely, without a doubt, changed my life.
And that's our podcast, brought to you by Columbia Basin Trust. For more information on all the good things the Trust accomplishes in the basin, go to ourtrust.org. Vince Hempsall helps with story selection and marketing of this podcast when he's not scaling mountains. We thank Vince for his incredible work. You can see some of the work he does on our website, headwaterspodcast.com. I'm Mitchell Scott. Thanks for listening.